Seems fair to me. Fair decision.
Yes, he did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it look like any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Hey there, it's Alvin Reid sitting in for Charlie Brennan this week. I want to open the show by saying my mom has returned from Israel after 10 days, safe and sound, and way to go, Mom. She said she had a wonderful time, had to walk a lot in the hot sun, but I think it was worth it. So welcome home, Mom. A bit somber. Yesterday, we lost Tina Turner, who basically launched her career here, lived here for many, many years. Really set me back when I kind of heard that news. Just one of those people that you never really thought, to quote Bernie Hayes, that you would be thinking about Tina Turner as passing away. But she left us yesterday, and what a tremendous entertainer, what a tremendous representative of St. Louis. And, you know, not just us, not just around here, but the entire world is mourning Tina Turner right now. Also, we lost Rick Hummel, the commish, longtime St. Louis Cardinal baseball writer. I met him many times, just a great gentleman. And I know, Bill, you and Joe just were around him for decades, and what a guy.
Yeah, you know, when I started at the Post-Dispatch, there were two people that basically I knew by reputation, by reading the stories. One was this guy here, and the other one was Rick Hummel. And I probably read more of Rick's because, you know, baseball writers will write 3-4 stories every game, and how he did it and did it so well every game, day in, day out. And I remember, you know, being a little hesitant to approach him. Just not a nicer guy. I mean, the idea that this guy's, you know, he's in Cooperstown. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was respected by everybody in baseball. Was called commish by 2 baseball commissioners. And you would have never known any of that by talking to Rick Hummel. Just a down-to-earth, unassuming guy, and rest in peace, commish.
Well, a terrific fellow. And Ben Frederickson and Benjamin Hartmann and Bernie Miklasz and Derek Gould all wrote stories that were really wonderful about him. And Derek Gould mentioned that on the desk near his bed, when the morning he died, was a scorecard that he had made of the Cardinals the night before. Wow. That he found comfort in that. And he was such a nice guy. He never had a sharp word for anybody. One time to me, and it was when Joe Strauss was going to be taking the baseball beat. They were bringing Strauss in, and I said something moderately questioning. I said, like, Joe Strauss. I said, what, so he's going to be an expert on the Cardinals next week? You know, I don't know about that. Something like that. And Rick said, don't do that. Don't be like that. He said, Joe's a great guy, a great writer. You'll like him. Don't blame him for anything. Wow. And I mean, that's the only time I ever heard Rick be sharp with anybody, was just telling me to be better. And I thought, I mean, he was really a terrific guy.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
okay, if you haven't figured it out already, Joe Holleman is on the show this week. All right. So, anyway, joining us also, Wendy Wiese from KTRS. You met Bill on the show already, a founder of this show. Ray Hartmann's here, too, once again.
We deserve no introduction. We deserve no introduction.
And once again, Joe Holleman is me, and I'm Charlie. So, well, we're going to start out at the Circuit Attorney's Office. And boy, was it quiet this week, and boy, was that a good thing. Last Friday, Gabe Gore was announced as the selection to replace Kim Gardner. He won't be sworn in until after Memorial Day as he finishes his requirements at Dowd Bennett. And Ray, the choice and your thoughts on where we go from here.
Well, first of all, Governor Mike Parson could have done a lot worse. He stuck to the MAGA script. He could have brought in anybody. He didn't have to do whatever he wanted to do. This was different than when George Peach resigned and John Ashcroft was the governor, but it was like just months before the election, and he just chose the Republican at the time who was already an announced candidate. The election for this position isn't until next November of 24. He sure seems like a qualified guy. Being the cynic that I am, and I realize some people may not appreciate that, I thought I just couldn't stop thinking about how one of the big stories regarding St. Louis in the last few years involving the governor was when Kim Gardner made what I think was the right decision to prosecute the McCloskeys for waving guns at protesters in June of 2020. And of course, they went on to be stars of the National Convention. He ran for Senate. And there's so here's the guy that offered a pardon to the McCloskeys for that, to the previous circuit attorney. And I thought, I would have loved to ask at the press conference, which, you know, wasn't there, well, what do you think about that decision? And what would you think if the governor, who's sitting right here next to you, decides to pardon somebody that that you've prosecuted before you've even charged them? And so I guess I think there's some irony to the story, but at the end of the day, it's good news that St. Louis seems to have a reasonably well acclaimed. One last thought: for some reason, the police officers were not. They were not. The St. Louis Police Officers Association was not exactly effusive on this, and I don't know quite what to make of that. I just don't know. But it was notable to me that they were they were not joining all politicians from both parties in praising this decision. I wish them well, of course.
I love the way you write. I think everyone should subscribe to your column on Substack, as we all do. But I was waiting for you to ask rhetorically whether or not he was at Ford's Theater the night of April 14th. You know, and I mean, it was really a fun column. But I mean, I think we have to give the man the benefit of the doubt.
We do.
You asked a lot of terrific questions, but we'll find out. I mean, he certainly has a Herculean task ahead of him. So.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say he's got a great resume.
Yeah.
And Dowd Bennett, you know, they don't hire people who aren't really smart.
Right.
And he was one of the names thrown around, he and Reggie Harris, to be the next U.S. attorney, back when we thought Joe Biden would do the normal thing and appoint a U.S. attorney. So I thought, here's a guy who might have been U.S. attorney, and now instead he's circuit attorney. I mean, it's two very different sort of jobs. I mean, it's like very odd, but I think a great choice.
Yeah, I would basically echo. Actually, I want to agree with Ray. I agree with Ray that Governor Parsons, Kim Gardner filed charges against so few people. You don't need the governor undercutting you when you actually do your
That's
job.
reasonable.
That's true.
No, I think that's true.
I think, one thing I heard from a couple of sources was that actually that the circuit judges were actually impressed in a Zoom meeting or a conference call with Governor Parson, who basically said, "What are you guys thinking?" And he said, "I just want the best guy or gal, but I don't care about party." Now, whether or not this is true, but this is what my source said, is that the judges were pleasantly surprised when they met with Parson, where he said, "I want to hear from you who you think's the person that could come in and clean this mess up." So as Wendy's on radio, on KTRS, where the professor said, Governor Parson has a chance to be a statesman. And I think he was. And I think he deserves credit for that.
I agree with that. I did. The first words I wrote, I wasn't being snarky. I said he deserves credit because he, as I say, I can't help myself from noting that it's such a departure from the MAGA points that he embraces a lot. But he did the right thing. I mean, and he did take this very seriously, and he was very much open. He didn't stay on the script. So I agree. I mean, I think it was something he should be credited for. I mean,
let me ask you all this. Mr. Gore did not rule out running for the office in, a year or so from now. He said, "I can't think about it now, but I can't rule it out, when the time comes." Does that guarantee that he's going to run? Because I all of a sudden fell into I'm 80% on the side that he will seek this office.
I would think it depends on how it goes. I think that it's going to be kind of a get the band together again sort of thing. A lot of old prosecutors might be coming in, but short term, more or less, and just get everything running. And I don't think it's a sure thing at all that Gore is going to run.
I think he will.
Because he's leaving a lot of money on the table.
That makes, I know.
Yeah,
He certainly is.
Yeah, I think you're right about the basic analysis. We can't say yet. He's got connections to the political world, interestingly, on both sides. He worked for the only thing that scares me about him is he worked for Jack Danforth early in his career on the Waco investigation, and God forbid, after Jack Danforth gave us Clarence Thomas and Josh Hawley, I hope this wasn't one of his recommendations.
Ed Dowd was second in command on the Waco.
I'll play with it, but I'm just saying we don't need any more recommendations. On the other side, Jay Nixon was quite fond of him, appointed him to the board at Southwest Missouri State.
And Ferguson Commission.
And the Ferguson Commission. So he's got connections, but I think you're right. I think that's an interesting job. He might very well look at it and say, you know.
Well, you know, I can imagine just from knowing what myself a little bit, but a lot of our court reporters had such a difficult time getting information. So the picture of dysfunction that the media was able to report is probably much worse. And I just wonder, when you walk in there and actually start opening up the drawers, and opening the closets, it very well could be something where you said, year and a half of this is enough.
Wait, I will probably flip the last page of the backlog the day I would have to announce I was going to run. I don't want to do that.
Right.
Okay, meanwhile, speaking of attorneys, hey, you know, Kim Gardner, one of her biggest problems was people bolting out of the office. Meanwhile, in Jefferson City, Attorney General Bailey, it seems that, quote unquote, a lot of good conservatives are leaving his office. We got Kim Gardner 2.0 here, Wendy?
I don't think so. It sounds like some of those folks had already made the decision to the die was cast. In other words, they were going to leave anyway. But Andrew Bailey does seem to be having some trouble in terms of just getting his footing. There is the question being posed by Will Scharf, who has already thrown his hat into the ring for the Attorney General's position, asking about, you know, the video gaming and his connection to that industry. So I think that Andrew Bailey has he's got to get some counsel in there pretty quickly that he can rely on, but I don't think we have a Kim Gardner type situation.
No, I'm not an Andrew Bailey fan, but a lot of these people go to work for the AG's office just to get it on their resume.
Right, exactly.
And so, you know, like Jim Talon's son.
Right, Michael
is one of the ones who has left. And, you know, I don't think he was ever intending to be a career guy in the AG's office. Right. So I don't think that.
Well, and I think it's just a different world today. And if young people aren't happy with something, they leave. Or, I mean, there's just not a lot of hesitation. You know, it's the way we were brought up. It's, you know, make a name for yourself, stay 5 or 10 years. They don't do that today.
They don't do it, and I also think you brought up two good points, both when you mentioned that this story was sort of pushed by Will Scharf, who is running against Andrew Bailey in the primary. I think he made a very good point about questioning the ties to the video gaming and video gambling industry. I thought that was a legitimate point, and it's one that should come up during the election. I also think that Mr. Scharf saw a good chance of trying to get the words Andrew Bailey and Kim Gardner into the same sentence.
You mean like I did?
Right, absolutely.
That's a great
Kim Gardner, Andrew Bailey, you know, and it's politics. That's politics, so I don't have a problem with any of it. Do I think he's the next Kim Gardner? Boy, you got to wait for a lot of disastrous water to go under a bridge.
And I agree with that. And that's all I was doing. I used that opportunity to connect those two names.
I think that's a good point, a very good point, actually. But, you know, Kim Gardner, I don't want to relitigate that for sure, but she wasn't given the benefit of that doubt anytime somebody left. In other words, I think you're right. It's very common in prosecutors' offices.
She drove people out of the office, she really did.
I don't question that, but there was an assumption that everybody who left would have left under that for that reason, as opposed to the facts that you're making, the statements you're making, which are accurate, that these jobs are generally not places, including the circuit attorney's office, where people plan to spend their whole career. She wasn't given that benefit of the doubt, is all I'm saying. Now,
She's gone, right? You've defended her.
No, I'm saying, I get it, but I'm saying that's interesting to hear it.
I think that is. Now, even though I connected the names, I do think that's apples and oranges.
I think Will Scharf, I do think Will Scharf scarf is interesting. He's asking questions.
Well, Bailey's name's in a lot of headlines recently.
No, I'm
so
saying
yeah,
I think he's asking questions that, quite honestly, the media, if it were more critical, would have been asking already.
McGraw-Millhaven tried. It was like listening to somebody trying to nail Jell-O to a wall when he had Andrew Bailey on earlier this week.
Well,
he could not pin.
well,
him
but that
down.
doesn't
and the
mean you shouldn't have.
Post-Dispatch has had stories about the gambling.
Yeah, but I will say, in general.
My deal is that this is, okay, I get a feeling that some of these people might have left because, like, it's like, you know, he just took over, did not run for office, was appointed, and he's already running again.
Running.
Because some of this stuff he's
Hard.
talking about is straight politics.
He's not
and maybe as a attorney working there said, like, look, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, but I didn't come here to get this guy
That's
elected.
what I was just going to say. And there are some people, I think, that said, look, I didn't sign on to write amicus briefs on national issues because that's all he does.
Okay. Our state Supreme Court, now, you know, like, I guess this is like maybe a real thing since they are actually considering this. Bill, all right, I got truant kids, they're running wild, causing all kind of trouble, and they come to me and say, like, Bill, either get them together or you going to go to jail. Where are you at on that?
Well, I've suggested that before. I suggested, wrote a column that some of these kids, they strike me as just amoral. They're not immoral, but they just don't care about anything. And I said, maybe if we put their mothers in jail, because they all love their moms, and the federal judges had invited me to speak at a luncheon. You know, Henry Autry had called me and said, would you speak at luncheon? And then that column came out, and a couple of the judges objected to it. And Henry called and said, hey, I hate to tell you, but we have to disinvite you to the lunch. And I said, well, Henry, you guys aren't even paying me. You know, and this is just another column for me. So I like the idea. I mean, there's some of these kids, I don't know how to reach them. And so, yeah.
I think you deserve to be disinvited
I
for
think
that.
so,
I disagree.
right?
I mean, you can't. I mean, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can. We want to try everything, but the presumption that a parent is guilty because their kids have gotten away from them is
Well, we're going to give them a chance, right?
No,
I mean,
I'm
we're
just
not
saying,
like throwing them in the
no, but I'm
jail
just saying, I just don't.
We're going to warn them.
That's
you
not
tell
how our
your
laws are
child
set up.
He's got to go to school.
I get that, but I don't think you can criminalize the parent in that situation. I just don't think that's the way our system's set up. They are other people, and you cannot. They're not an extension of the mom, in my opinion. I just don't think you can do it.
Well, I mean, it's quiet as it's kept. Jail is a deterrent to crime. Because if jail was just simple jail was not a deterrent to crime, ain't no telling what all we'd be out here doing.
Right.
So thus, if there was maybe the threat and the parent could then say, like, do you realize that they can actually hold me over the weekend because of you? Start going to school, maybe it will work.
Nah,
I think if you look at, and I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, none of us are, so I can't sit there and look at the law and say, well, this allows this. But if the parents aren't responsible, who is?
But you can't just put them in jail when you're not going to have a trial.
At some
You're just
point,
gonna
there
put them
has
in
to be
jail.
a message, though.
No trial.
Well, I don't think they're saying boom, being in jail.
Right.
They're talking about 16 absences. They're talking about 80% attendance. I know what would have happened to me if I'd have got caught one time skipping school.
Fine, but
these are missing 1 day a week for an entire semester.
And is it-
At some
yeah.
point in time,
just come
somebody
through-
has to care.
So we're just going to come throw them in jail? No trial? No, just throw them in
You
jail.
make it sound like it's a lackadaisical, let's
No,
do it
no,
on
let's
a
just
whim.
throw them in jail.
Well, then who is responsible for these kids,
I'm
right?
not saying that I'm responsible. I'm saying you're going to throw, what's the crime going to say? And what's the process look like? You just say, well, we're going to put them in jail.
No, we're not going to say that, right? There is going to be a
trial. We're
process,
going to have trials.
and the parents are going to be brought in. Often the mother will be brought in and
charged. And charged with a crime.
Eventually, right? If
your kids are
that's
truant
the
and you're
idea.
charged with a crime.
I'm just saying
Do you
that-
get defense
I
counsel?
mean,
or do
just
we
out of curiosity, where's Dad? Is Papa a
Oh, no,
Rolling
this is,
Stone,
no.
or
just
we're,
the mom?
we're
Is
just
it
saying
just the
that,
dad?
all right, well, let's be real about it, okay? The group of students that we're talking about probably do not have two parents in the home.
And
Let's just be real
how do you
about
decide
it.
which parent you're going to put in jail?
The one that's in custody and in charge
You're going
of
to
the kid.
you're going to charge them with a crime, and do they get defense counsel, or do we just like?
No,
send
well,
them away?
Now, Ray, now you're
what's the
trying
process?
to make it sound.
No,
the
I'm saying, what does the process
The
look
Supreme
like?
Court is looking at it. You tell me. You never answered my question. Who's responsible for those kids going to school? Who is responsible for those kids going to school?
Well, I don't know. I don't know, actually. I mean, in this case, if the
Apparently you
parents
have
does their best-
children, I have children, and we're not responsible if our kids go to
We're
school.
responsible,
Yes, we are.
but
Okay.
Yes,
to
we
make
are.
it a
Think we are.
crime
Thank you.
that your child doesn't go to school is, I think, wrong. First of all, I don't think it's a criminal offense, A. And B, I don't think that we need, the state to decide because the state wants, we got the state doing all kinds
So
of
let's
things
let the
now.
state ignore it now, but then have to take care of them for the years on down the road.
I think
The whole idea
you
is
can
we
make a case for taking the kid and put him in foster care if the parents don't do
Oh,
it.
put the kid in jail.
Well, no, well,
I mean,
if
hey.
the parent is
What are
irresponsible.
you going to charge him
think
with,
that-
Ray, if you're going to take care
No,
of him
you
with his
can't. There
parents?
are processes
I
where
think
you
that
can lose your
what we're-
child for irresponsible parenting.
That's
one thing, but that doesn't put the mom in jail. Not the dad, of course, because he's gone. No, I don't think you even contemplate.
I
putting
think
him in
what
jail.
we're
Now, they're
looking
just
at
trying
here-
to think of
Yeah.
some way
What?
so these kids don't get in the
I think that
pipeline to go to
we
jail,
all
prison.
agree that
Right.
that would be nice, but jailing the mother
But there-
is not the
Right.
way to
Or
go.
the
We are now a
It's
few
not.
generations into
Right.
a complete breakdown when it comes to accountability and who is responsible for these children.
Agreed.
And it's only going to get
All right.
worse.
But you don't
Who is
put them in
responsible
jail.
for all these water mains breaking in the city? Apparently, Joe, it's you.
It's apparently me.
He's responsible.
Because Joe is
Put him
the
in
only one
jail.
here that lives in the city, so he's the only one facing a 40% water
I have
bill.
indeed been breaking all the water mains. that have happened. No, it's a situation in the news being that the city wants to raise the rates by 40%, 20% one year, 20% the next year. And so let me unequivocally state, I do not want to pay more. But what I want more is that when I turn my faucet on, that water comes out. It's the same sort of expectation I have of the electric company and the Metropolitan Sewer District. A couple of those, when I turn things on, I want it to come in. The other one, when I flush something, I want it to go away. We have had 70-year-old pipes that were made when I used to get sent 20-something years ago to cover a water main break when I was a night police reporter. And you'd sit around and be talking to the water guys who were down there digging it up. They're going, these pipes were outdated 10 years ago. They've been in here that long. So, was the city at fault over decades for kind of kicking that can down the street? Absolutely. But at some time, you have to pay for it. And I want water to come into my house. I have been without water coming into my house because of water main break. Not fun. I don't want that. So if that's the cost that it's going to take, then you pay it.
I say you find out whose fault the mother, the
Put the
main
mother, yeah,
was,
blame
and
the
put their
mother.
mom in jail.
Well, I think we just say nobody's responsible.
No, I think
And
you got
then we-
somebody's
you know, then
responsible.
let the water find its way where they wanna go.
Somebody's
Right.
responsible for that water main break. Put their mom in jail. Teach them a lesson.
I'm okay.
No, a 40% increase, and the citizens, the users, the people who are turning on those faucets like Joe, they are not responsible for a deteriorating system. So let them off the hook.
Especially if I just moved to the city and everybody,
Oh
man,
my
we
God.
need people to move
Yeah.
to the city, support
Yeah.
the city. I moved in 2 weeks ago, and then I get your water bill's going up 40%. I wouldn't be very happy with it.
Yeah, some of the real estate is reasonable, but your water bill is going to be
We pay
$2,000 a
for
month.
every expenditure that government makes, whether it's through your property
That's
tax,
true.
your personal property, your
Unfortunately.
sales
That's
tax. So
true.
the idea is everything that the government does for you, they're using your money to do it. So now they're in a crisis situation because what they should have done in smaller increments, but because they knew there would be the wailing and gnashing of teeth over a big increase, they kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And at some time you can't put it off anymore. So fix it, and the cost is the cost.
All right, we got
We
2
had
minutes.
that with MSD.
All right, we got 2 minutes left, all right? And I will say that I get an alert on my phone that tells me when the International Space Station is going to go over, and I'm going to watch it tonight at about 10:50 p.m. So that's my knowledge of geospatial. But the big national conference was here this week, and it was determined that St. Louis is the hotbed of enthusiasm for the geospatial industry. Ray, do you agree?
Who determined it? No, I mean, I think we are a player. I think we've got the NGA, which we've had, by the way. It's not new, but we've had it for decades, and now it's moving to a new home, a little bit bigger. I think it's an area that we should be, the whole geospatial area is something we should pursue as a metropolitan strategy. It's a great thing. I wrote a Substack about it a couple of weeks ago where Greater St. Louis was proclaiming that we were the center, which was just, and the problem was, I'm not trying to be down on St. Louis, it's just empirically not true. We might as well say we're the largest city in America. I mean, there are cities like Boston and Austin.
Hey, if Better Together would have worked, Ray, we would be the biggest city.
Right, exactly, exactly. And my point is, we just need to be real. We just need to be proud of our city. It's got great cities, one of the best places to live in the country. It's some of the best food, the best culture.
Cardinals
but we do
looking good.
not need to be saying untrue things to make ourselves feel better. And that's what we keep doing in geospatial.
I disagree, Ray. I think that sometimes we do need to feel better about ourselves.
Just say untrue things.
And if the city wants to say we're #1 in the geospatial,
even though we're not, just say it. Right?
I don't want to use the name, but that's quite Trumpian, isn't it? I mean,
it is.
I think what they meant was we were #1. We're the biggest per capita, maybe.
No, they didn't say that. They said we're the center, and we are not the center. We're not even close. We're not even in the top 10. And I think we should want to be. I think we can say we are as excited about it as anybody. You can say things, but you don't have to.
I think that's all right, though.
Yeah.
I do think sometimes.
You're a journalist. How do you just make it up?
As a journalist, Ray, I never believe anytime anybody tells me they're the best.
Right.
All right, we got to move on. Got to move on. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, no letters today, but you can write to us at Donnybrook, care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Send an email to donnybrook@9pbs.org or a tweet to #DonnybrookSTL. You can call the 9 line, Donnybrook comment line, 314-512-9094. And you can catch us on podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and tune in. Joe Holleman is from the Post-Dispatch officially. Thank you for being with us tonight. Hey, Charlie will be back next week. I'll be here in my regular seat next week. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for Next Up.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.